Hi, and welcome to the Selected Tech podcast, brought to you by a group of 4 MVPs doing webinars, sessions, and interviews on all things SharePoint, Office 365, and the Microsoft AI ecosystem. Their motto is learn, share, reuse. And here they are, Albert Jan, Rick, Stefan, and Tommy.
Hi, and welcome at episode 29. Whoa. This time we're going to talk about bringing together some cool new technology. Tommy is going to show us in Teams, so that's the cool thing, how to use Blazor, Authorizeview, and the Microsoft Toolkit, making sure that you can build cool stuff for Teams with new technology. So not just SharePoint Framework, not just .NET or Angular or React, whatever you want to use, but also technology like Blazor. So really looking forward to what Tommy is showing us.
Perfect. Then I'll take it over from here. You can see my screen. I think it's
all good.
All good. Yeah. I just want to get like one step ahead or one step further with the example. I think we did, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 episodes
something like that
where we basically used the Microsoft Graph Toolkit to authenticate our Blaze application here. And if I click on Get Teams, I will make the callback, and then I will get some or my teams from my tenant in this drop down, and then I will get back information about the users in the team, who is owner, and the email addresses, and all that stuff. What we did back then was using the Microsoft Graph Toolkit to authenticate our users. So basically to get the bearer token of the graph of the Azure Active Directory application that is configured inside the code. The problem with that approach is if I would just start this page again, you will already see content here before you click on authentication. And that's okay-ish in some cases, but most of the time you want to have something like a login screen, and you want to make sure that in Blazor it's called route, or no endpoint, no page, no href to any other location is already available but your login page. And only if a user successfully authenticated on your login page, then you're going to forward them or you're going to redirect them to the actual application. Because if you think of it, because how the system now is working inside in Teams, speaking now of the use case, if we don't use single sign-on, so if you go single sign-on, then it's different. But if you don't use single sign-on, then you need a page with a login button, and then you can click there. You can automate stuff. So when you get back, or if your page loads and it recognizes, okay, I'm inside in Teams, which it does because you load the Microsoft Teams JavaScript, and then you realize, okay, I'm inside in Teams, and you can kick off automated login under the scenes, because the user sometimes already logged in like yesterday or a week ago, so you know who it is, and then you can reuse what you get from Teams. But normally you get to an anonymous page, you need to log in, and then you're good to go and see your internal content. And in the next couple of minutes, I want to show you how you can make this approach happen with Blazor and the Microsoft Graph Toolkit. So I stop again here, stop my demo for a second, and I'm going back and directly in the code of my index page. So what we looked at here is the index page. I think it's the actual code for demo 2 running with our drop down, and we get back the Microsoft Graph Teams. And then we basically just use this custom component here to render our team members. What's new now is that we have a login page here. Because if you look at this index page, and if you go back to the old video, you will see that the code isn't really, or it didn't change anything here in that page. But what changed is that if I go to shared and to go to my main layout, because in Blazor we are creating Razor pages, and those Razor pages, they use a layout basically to get the surrounding, because the login or the index page is rendered inside of this div in the body here. But what we are using here is an attribute saying authorize. And this attribute authorize says that everything loaded or everything in this page is only accessible for authorized users. So there's a way to tell the application that this is a legit user and it's authorized already, and it blocks everyone else. And it's different for my login page here, because the login page has the attribute of allow anonymous. So this is the only page that is reachable without a proper login, without a chance to go a step further. So let's try that out. And I think we will hit a logic or a missing step already, because you see it was a blink there and it's authorized already. Let's go back and actually have a look at our sources. It must be no application, of course.
Cookies.
You see here the local storage, and you see everything here, and application cache and everything we get. If we clear that, because the Microsoft Graph Toolkit basically caches everything in the local storage, we delete that, restart our debugging process or our debugging application. I think we should hit the login page then. Yep, you see, I'm in the login page, and if I go now there, and let's just copy the thing over and try the index page, I'm getting not authorized. So although I know the exact path to the page, I'm not authorized at the moment. So the system says, okay, you're not allowed to access any content. That's very important if you think of if you're designing an application. And again, just to recap from the last time, I'm using here a mixed approach in terms of authentication. Why? Because actually I'm not inside of Teams yet. I'm just running in a local browser. Just to go back and repeat that part on the login part here. That's because the Microsoft Graph login component has two providers here, one for Teams and one AMSL provider. And if it doesn't fetch any information from Teams, which is obviously the case if I call the page directly, because I'm not living in the Teams iframe, it uses my AMSL provider to get the bureau token at the end. So again, different Azure Active Directory apps possible. So this one is like F6 and this is F7. It's just a different GUID and a different application. But in my example now, we are using this this configuration here, this authentication, and it's my user is not authorized, so I don't see anything here. What I need to do is I need to sign in, and nope, it remembered it. So you see, it was like a short second on the page, and now I'm on my index page. Now I can get my Teams, and with that already I know everything is working, because for listening of my Teams, I already would need an access token, and then I have some test Teams here with myself as the only owner. So there are all my Teams, and I can jump in between and see who is there as owner or as a member. What happened on this login page, actually, let's stop the debugging again, is that, of course, we're using the authentication here in terms of configuration, what the login component should use to authenticate, because basically that means that there is, through pulling in the Microsoft Graph Toolkit, there's JavaScript code now in my application that handles everything under the hood for me. So I don't need to care about how it internally gets the token and validates the token and all that stuff. So that's somehow kept away from me. But I have one big problem in Blazor. And the thing is that if I go to the page, I'm just a normal JavaScript or HTML component with the MGT login component, and that doesn't. This component does not have a callback for my Blazor environment. I'm talking JavaScript now, and in Blazor, I want to have everything in C#. So how can I combine those different words here, or these different levels or words in that retrospective? And the trick is, and yeah, a little bit ashamed to say that, but it took me quite some time to have a really, really simple solution for that. And you already see it because there is a helper button here. Because what I do is that I'm running a JavaScript file. Where is it? Here we are. That's pretty simple. I'm adding an event listener for login completed. That's the the event from my login button for my Microsoft Graph Toolkit component. And I say, okay, whenever you get a login completed, click virtually on the helper button. That's all I do in JavaScript. And what this actually does is that, okay, something happens here. I cannot call directly C# code, because for C# code to be called directly, it would need to be a static method. A static method in a server Blazor application means that every user has the same method, which if you deal with authentication might not be the smartest way to go. So I would need a dynamic method. That's not so easy, but what you can easily do is that you can create this little event trick here. I click on my helper button, and my helper button has an on-click event. And here we are, and say, okay, login completed, and then I call user authenticated. And what user authenticated actually does is it says, okay, I will again call JavaScript to get my Microsoft Graph Toolkit user information and get the token. Those are now calls from C# to JavaScript, because those two strings are method names over here, because I get now the token from my Microsoft Graph Toolkit. So that's all the information, or all the lines I need to write in JavaScript. I get my user information. I get my providers and the properties, account name, username, account identifier. You can go deeper, whatever you want to create there. But what I'm doing here is that I create my own Microsoft Graph Teams Explorer authentication user. And that's the bulky name is the name of my solution, because this is a user object that I create, saying, okay, name, email, user ID, access token, and I create this here. And then I say, okay, Microsoft Graph Toolkit, that's the authentication separator. That's again my class name. I'm mapping, or I'm casting authentication separator to that. And I say, okay, mark user as authenticated current user. So I'm telling the .NET runtime, the current user is authenticated. And then I'm saying, okay, navigation manager, navigate to index. That's all there is. That's the whole magic part. Of course, next question is like, okay, what does this class look like? Because the user is really, really pretty simple. And the authentication state provider isn't really that spectacular either. We have a get authentication state async. We will come to that in a few minutes. But first, we have this mark user as authenticated. And basically, we're creating a new claims principle with the current user, because we created the user in the login page. We added the name, we added the email, we added the user ID, we added the access token, whatever you want to add there. And then you say, okay, I'm adding the user here, and I'm notifying authentication state changed. I'm notifying the .NET runtime. Okay, good to go. The ASP.NET Core Identity System now says, okay, this user is authenticated. This already is good enough for just authentication.
You just did actually bring your own authentication then to Blazor.
Yep. Yeah.
Yep. And so it's not really my own authentication. I would call it more like I'm managing the Microsoft Graph Toolkit authentication, because I don't authenticate. I'm using the Microsoft Graph Toolkit, and what I get from there, I make it work inside of Blazor. But in a technical way, you're correct. It's like, okay, an own implementation, but I'm not authorizing or really writing the authorization code, just reusing another library. And the whole idea for this is that, okay, you could argue for a server application, like really a Blazor server application. It might not be the best solution, because if you have a server application, you have a trustworthy client already. You are a web application with a server-side code, and you can have an app secret and an app ID in the application settings hidden on the server, and you're good to go. You won't need that kind of jumping through hoops. But for Blazor WebAssembly, it's different. And what I'm doing here basically is using the server as a playground to fiddle around with authentication and then to reuse it in Blazor WebAssembly. Because for Blazor WebAssembly, you don't have this trusted client because you live in the browser actually, in the client-side application world. And for that area, I wouldn't use app secret and app ID statically built in my application, because that's pretty easy. You get a DLL in your local storage, and what are they called? At every security demo, the bad guys always, I think, Alice and Bob, and then there's some bad guy coming in there, eavesdropping on something, and all you need to do is grabbing that DLL, refactor that, use reflector, and search for app secret, app ID. That's pretty easy. If you scroll through the code, you will see that immediately. So that's not going to help you there. With that approach, you're really using the authentication from the Microsoft Graph Toolkit, and you're just using the bearer token. One major issue with where I am at the moment, it looks really nice on the login part, and you see, okay, I'm through here and I'm good to go, and works in Teams fine, no problem. But what's missing, if I click here F5, it says not authorized. Why?
No, it's not.
Now I'm coming back because I'm not done yet. I don't get the authentication state async, because that's a method that is called now, because it's a new page cycle, a new request, and I already tried it, but I'm not done yet. Next step is to store, or to persist, is the better word, persist the authenticated user. One option would be local storage. Another option would be using the identity system of ASP.NET Core. Not sure what I'm gonna try first, or what's the better option here. Obviously, I think I don't even try to run the code yet. It's just the line there, to use the local storage and say, okay, as long as you are you're available in terms of local storage, I know you are the current user. I can do a recheck on the bearer token, check for valid token, all that stuff. Check actually how long the token is still the lifetime of the token, all that stuff, and I'm good to go. But again, the idea is to reuse as much as possible from login here, and to connect the both worlds of JavaScript and Blazor. And it's really easy just with those.
All those get token again and get all that stuff from, but then you doing it every page, so that might not be the best performance stuff.
Yeah, I would need to create a service for that, because my authentication step provider is already a service. So it's like in Blazor there are different types of services, and this is one that is just for the current user. Because if you mix the services, you again maybe create a singleton that is a service for everyone using application, which again on a server side Blazor application for authentication wouldn't be the best idea, because you store then every token in one single instance. The other option is because I already know that the Microsoft Graph Toolkit caches everything locally. So I could just ask the toolkit component again. That's probably the better way around. Just, okay, I'm not going directly to Graph. I'm just asking the MGT login component, because that covers the complicated stuff for me. Anyways, I was close to say filthy stuff. It's complicated stuff. So I don't need to
expires, all that stuff.
All that stuff. It's in there, and I would just need to realize, okay, if the token is not valid anymore, change here. Again, same method, saying notify authentication status changed, and would just say, okay, user is not authenticated anymore. So you're jumping back to login, click there, and you're good to go. That's it, basically. So step number 3 is done. Step number 4, using local storage, is the next one to go. But I really like the double-edged sword, basically.
You can just
in the Teams provider and MSL. That's really cool.
And it's smart enough to figure out which one it needs.
Yep.
Oh, cool. That's really good.
you have a depends on. So it's basically, I'm not 100% sure what if depends is really the right word, because there is no Teams provider now present here. I would, or at least for what I'm doing, it for me is more like this is like prior 1 and this is prior 2.
Yeah.
So if this is present, then if there is a Teams SDK present, then it uses this one. And I really tried it out with 2 different application IDs. So I could fiddle around and make one not accessible to make really sure, okay, this helps. And the other, major accomplishment is the realization that you can create events in JavaScript as well. And it's so easy. And I think, to be honest, I tried for 3 or 4 weekends to start from the C# side to grab this event. And then at some point I was like, wait a minute, why not doing it the other way around? Like, okay, pretty easy.
Yeah.
Couple of lines here, just the other way around. And this button is never visible.
Yeah, because the other methods you said, it's C# calling JavaScript, but there must be something in Blazor then, because C# calling must
of
be
course
some connector.
There is, but the thing is always what kind of method are you calling? I can easily call from a static method. I can easily call the JavaScript there, but I cannot have a static method in here because it's the authentication stuff. So that's not gonna fly. So I needed a dynamic method, and there is also a way to go there and add dynamic content, but you would need to inject basically your object also in the C# code, and that's not so easy with the Microsoft Graph Toolkit, because it's not a component that you pull in from another library. Maybe there is a way, and I wasn't just smart enough to do that, or can always be the case, but this actually the other way around is like 3 lines of JavaScript to trigger that button. And of course it's not the perfect architecture if you need a button that has a display of none. That's clear, but it does the trick.
At least it works.
Yep. Cool. Or at least it's a really, really easy way to try to understand, okay, what is authentication and how does it work. And of course, for let's call it a proper client or a proper development project, you would use, or I would suggest to use SSO anyways. But this works with Azure Websites as a domain also. And for SSO, you also need to add that. And what I realized is that it's I really like the stuff that I can develop just in my browser window here, and I take care of Teams afterwards. That's really the good part with those 2 approaches. And also, if you think of an application that maybe already exists and you would like to make it Teams aware on the go, so you would need to have two approaches anyways.
Yeah, it's usually the best approach, having not only in Teams but also you're building it anyway. So.
Yep.
Yeah. Cool sample.
That's it.
Cool.
Nice. I should really look into that Blazor stuff. Every time you show it, I'm like, oh, it's cool. I want to.
Yeah. You really should do it in like 3 or 4 weeks, because then there should be the newest preview of .NET 6 Blazor hybrid, like WPF application, Windows application with Blazor inside. Like really Blazor going in the desktop way. That will be interesting.
Cool. Oh yeah, it's almost built, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think the build is last week of May.
Okay.
Yeah.
End of May.
And they want to release .NET 6 in November, I think. So cool. Preview 4 or 5 should be available at Builder, something like that. Okay, then.
Cool. Well, let's see what we can record after build. Thanks. Was fun.
See ya.
See you guys.
Thanks. Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening. Make sure to check out the show notes at selectedtech.show to get all the mentioned references. And one more thing. Please tweet about the podcast and give them a 5-star review. This really helps the guys a lot. Thank you and see you next time. Bye.